Get Rich Education is brought to you by Norada Real Estate and Corporate Direct.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Hey, welcome to Get Rich Education, episode 80. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, returning like Jedi to help you build wealth for yourself. I'm making this show that I wish I had a decade ago. Man, if I had this a decade ago, this would have saved me a lot of time and made me a lot of money. But now I can do that for you. I'm glad you're here. Now heard in 162 world nations, even Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan. Thank you for making us iHeartRadio's choice for an investing show. Next month, Robert Kiyosaki, yes, Robert Kiyosaki will be here with me on Get Rich Education. I'm sure you all know about the influential Rich Dad, Poor Dad author, whom is surely one of the world's best-known investors today, that has all those great slogans which really resonate with me, like don't live below your means, expand your means, and don't work for money, work for knowledge. That is next month with me for the, what shall we call him? That quotable businessman, financial education mogul, and, you know, I think of him as really a branding icon. It will be Mr. Kiyosaki's debut with me here. We've also got Kiyosaki's Rich Dad advisor for real estate, Ken McElroy, returning to the show sometime after that. And you know, if that's not enough, we've also got a great guest coming on after Mr. Kiyosaki and Ken McElroy, and that guest is going to tell us how to predict real estate prices. Yes, after Kiyosaki and McElroy, an entire show devoted on how to predict real estate prices, which is going to be fascinating. All right, so yeah, I mean, come on now. I told you back during the new year that GRE was going to have more great shows and be full of surprises, so I'm just following up with you there. On today's show, we're going to talk about how you can create wheelbarrow profits in real estate with two guests. Today, we're also going to talk about the best tips on how you can negotiate. It's negotiating for the best real estate deal for yourself. This is a highly actionable show today, all right? Now, I just had a great phone chat this week with Garrett Sutton, whom is actually Robert Kiyosaki's legal advisor. You know, the bottom line is that I'm helping coordinate an event, one live 3-day event with Garrett Sutton and Tom Wheelwright that I look forward to telling you more about later this year. And you know what? When I tell you about that later this year, I think it's going to make you say, wow, I never really considered doing anything like that in my life before, and it could very well change your life if you get involved with what I'm helping Garrett and Tom with. Of course, each of those Rich Dad advisors, Garrett Sutton and Tom Wheelwright, have been here on the show with me, and Ken McElroy as well, and Josh and Lisa Lannon too. You can always look up those shows. I've got to thank Kiyosaki's Rich Dad advisors for being regular contributors to our show here, leading up to Robert Kiyosaki's appearance with me next month. Now, speaking of Kiyosaki and his advisors, each of them happen to have a book on our new recommended reading list at our website. Our list has started off small, and you can find that new book list at, of course, getricheducation.com. That's under the resources tab. Or you can just go to getricheducation.com/read or /reading. It all takes you to the same place. Sometimes, especially from beginners, I get questions about what books to read. Well, now you can go to getricheducation.com/read and just click on the book image there to be led to the Amazon page for that book. And you'll see that this first iteration is dominated by those Rich Dad Advisor books because those authors are great at making complex concepts simple. Of course, any book that I've put on that list for you is a book that I have read myself. Now, I've got to get a little bit critical here. There is one real estate investing book that's been popular for, I'd say 10 years or more. It's written by a well-known author And I've decided that I'm not going to put it on the list, okay? I'm keeping it off the list. And I'll tell you specifically why, okay? Now, the author does make some good points in this particular book that I'm keeping off the list. But the fact that he favors using 15-year mortgages to control rental properties rather than 30-year mortgages, that's something I disagree with, I guess really for two main reasons. First of all, with a 15-year loan, that has a higher monthly payment, and it's going to make it considerably more difficult for your property to cash flow than it would with a 30-year loan. And the other thing is with a 15-year loan's higher payments compared to the 30, okay, you're basically making extra principal payments on your loan. You're building equity faster with the 15, all right? Now, building equity faster, to some people, that sounds like a really good thing, but you know, as I passionately say, the return from equity is and always will be zero. Yes, you are paying less interest with a 15-year loan, but your opportunity cost of paying down 4% mortgage money is steep. Instead, you could have a lower payment with a 30-year loan, and with the money that you're not sinking into principal, you can almost surely beat that 4% interest elsewhere. I mean, my gosh, you can often beat that threefold to fivefold, and you can increase your arbitrage, okay? So besides this book favoring 15-year loans, the book also discusses the importance of getting that mortgage loan paid off, okay? As you know, I don't like that one either. When it's paid off, you've lost your leverage and you've lost some of your tax benefits too. And all of this is even more crucial today when interest rates are so low. You want to tend more toward originating and extending loans and not destroying loans. And your loans are going to be destroyed anyway. They're going to be destroyed without you using any of your own dollars by two forces known as inflation and tenant-paid principal paydown. Inflation and tenant-paid principal paydown are going to erode your loans anyway, okay? I just don't want to say the name of the book, but here's a hint. It has the word millionaire in it, and actually that's just another dagger in the heart of a book that makes some otherwise good points. You know what I think about the term millionaire. There's a lot of preconceived false notions about that term. Listen, millionaires are not wealthy. Yes, you heard that right. Millionaires are not wealthy. Where to even begin, okay? With both the way that a millionaire's prosperity is calculated and the forces of inflation, a millionaire is not wealthy today. Well, if a millionaire is not wealthy today, it certainly isn't something to aspire to in the future. I'm not going to explain all that. If you're not feeling me there on that millionaire thing, I devoted episode 33 to that very subject. All right, well, we're going to talk about Wheelbarrow Profits with our guests today. They're both New Yorkers. Today, one of our guests is going to be in New York, and the other is going to be where he's since relocated, Knoxville, Tennessee. And I like these guys' story, and they're also two pretty likable guys. I'm going to throw them at least one tough critical question here, okay? And we're going to kind of see how they handle it. They're both from New York. I think they can deal with it. Let's meet our guests. I'd like to welcome in today's guests. They are authors of the Amazon #1 best-selling book. The book's called Wheelbarrow Profits: How to Create Passive Income, Build Wealth, and Take Control of Your Destiny Through Multifamily Real Estate Investing. Jake and Gino hold $32 million in real estate assets. Jake and Gino, welcome to Get Rich Education.
Happy to be here.
How you doing, Keith?
Hey, I'm feeling pretty good. And this is Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro. We ought to get your full names in there. So Wheelbarrow Profits, it's not just a name. You actually have a bit of a wheelbarrow analogy that relates to real estate. We'll get into that in a moment, but give us just a couple minutes on your backstory. I think it's kind of an interesting backstory. How did you guys get together and end up meeting each other and partnering on deals?
Well, it started going back to 2010, 2011. This is Jake, and I was working in the pharmaceutical industry, and it was in Westchester County, New York, and the #1 place to go is Gino's Restaurant. No, that's true. They're the best, and I do have a dish on the menu. Just saying. Anyways, so I was doing my catering, working really closely with Gino's brother Marco, and at the time, I was starting to, see how the world worked, and I was looking at all the taxes I was paying living in New York, and just said to my wife, we got to look at a lower cost of living. So I was able to take a lateral transfer. We moved to Tennessee, no state income taxes, low property taxes, better weather. And my last visit to Gino's, I was going in having lunch. The whole time I was in New York, I had doctors telling me, look, real estate's the place to be. They were telling me you should go buy a duplex and rent out the other half. And they were just putting the bug and just really, mentoring me that I should be investing in real estate because they knew I was a ambitious guy and I wanted to build wealth. Well, right before I left, I was talking to Gino's brother, Marco, about it. And he said, my brother's been investing in multifamilies, has some commercial buildings. You really got to talk to him because I think he'd be interested. So right then and there, Gino brought the laptop out. We started looking at deals in Knoxville where I was moving. And he said, when you get down there, let's see what we can do. Fast forward, it took us 2 years once I got down in Knoxville to get our first deal. People were telling us we were crazy. We were trying to get into deals with creative financing, owner financing, and just being very aggressive. We wanted to make sure the numbers worked on paper, especially with our first deal. I guess it was 2012. We got into our first 25-unit mom and pop apartment complex and took our lumps, but we learned the business from the ground up. And today we have 674 units.
That's a fantastic growth rate in a short period of time. And then, Gino, you were in the restaurant. It sounds like you met Jake there in the restaurant. At that point, you had more experience than him.
I did. I was fortunate to buy my first property back in 2002. It was a 3-family. Actually, I thought it was a 4-family, but it was actually a 3-family. So I'm just going through the process now, 12 years later, 13 years later, of legalizing the 4th unit. And hopefully this week, after 2 years of grueling work, not doing my due diligence from the very beginning, the town let it slide. I did take my lumps. New York was a tough market for me. So back in 2008, when things sort of crashed, I said to myself, I need to do something different. I went to actually Rich Dad coaching school, which was great for me. It was not cheap, but it just started me on the path. It was a great experience for me. Started purchasing duplexes up in Rochester. I guess people would consider them now turnkeys. But back then, that term wasn't around yet. They were cash flowing really well, but the appreciation was just non-existent. I learned how to work with a management company, got my hands wet with that. I enjoyed it, but I saw there was no appreciation potential, and I just didn't want to keep buying one house here, one house there, scattered all over the place. It wasn't my model. So 2 years later, I decided to go coach with Dave Lindahl. That program just, I think, revolutionized my life. Gave me the systems on how to buy apartments and multis. And, you hear from all the newbies, all the new guys out there, they're always talking about commercial as 5 or more. I envision commercial as a strip mall. I don't envision it as apartments, but that's what people do. And they just say to themselves, I can't buy more than 5 units. And I think that's the wrong mindset. I think that anybody can buy an apartment. It's probably easier than buying a single because there's less competition. It's actually based on the numbers. It's not really as much going out and comparing it with comps. You're basing it on an NOI, which we'll probably get into a little later. But that's where I started. I said, I can't buy stuff in New York. Where am I going to go? So as luck would have it, last day Jake is in the area. I'm sitting down and I'm like, dude, what do you want to do here? This is great. I love Knoxville. I mean, the per door cost was $30,000 a unit. And they're getting $600 a month in rent. In comparison with New York here, it's over $100,000 a unit. And I'm getting maybe $1,100 in rent. So you can see the vast differences. The property taxes up here were a crusher. So I said, let's take a chance. Get down there. See what happens. Let's make some contacts. And like Jake said, Jake always forgets to tell this story, but I like it. He burned his seed money and bought a house. And I said, dude, we didn't even start this project yet. And we're already buying a house. So he ends up buying a house. We put on the back burner for a couple months. But I mean, I was really destined and determined to do it because I've got 6 kids. I said, I have to feed my family. I can't keep doing the restaurant. It's not making me enough money. And that's how we started. We started with the first 25 units. It was great, owner financing. We'll talk about the deal a little later because I think your listeners really have to hear that if you want to get into it, you will get into it. There will be no roadblocks. There'll be no stopping you. And if you can't do it yourself, find a partner, find somebody to help you because it's really worth just starting. Because once you start, you get that momentum. And that's what happened with me and Jake. We got that momentum. Jake got the bug. He went around collecting cash, collecting rents, which is what we don't do anymore. But that cash, I think from a W-2 earner to somebody who's actually becoming an entrepreneur and collecting money, I think that really bit him. He's like, wow, this is really awesome. I'm actually getting people to pay me. And then he started learning about the tax code and we started, diving into all the benefits of real estate. He said, this is going to be viable. But at the beginning, it was tough for him because he was working full time and having to manage these properties. So, there's a breaking point, I guess about a year ago, he left his job and I just retired from the restaurant about a month and a half ago. So we're both focusing on this full time and we're really trying to turn this whole business into a real system for us.
And not only that, the one thing that I think we've skipped over was the importance of the education and then taking action. Because I was fortunate that Gino went out and got his education, and then he was able to mentor me through the process. If that would have not happened, none of this would have happened because we were able to take action. But because he set the foundation with the education and mentored me as we went, that's why it all worked.
Yeah, if you want to get to the next step, the quickest and easiest way is to know someone that has already gone where you want to go.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, with partnerships, I often joke about partnerships that a partnership is twice the hassle and twice the headache and half the profit. But apparently, you guys have a pretty successful partnership. You've bought some properties together. You've even published a book together. So tell us a little bit about how the partnership came together and then how you came to buy in Eastern Tennessee and start to focus your holdings there.
Well, if it wasn't for the partnership, I don't think any of this would have happened because, it started, like we said, at the restaurant, but my ability to move to an emerging market gave us the opportunity to start to accumulate these units. It was really slow and tough sledding in the beginning because we weren't getting any good positive feedback from our offers. They're, like I said before, they were kind of saying we were crazy. But the key to our partnership is that we have common goals. From the beginning, we wanted to create passive income and build wealth. And we had those same goals, and we were both extremely hard workers. I never take a day off. Even if it's the weekend, I'm doing something for a few hours, not because I have to, because I want to. It's something I enjoy. And Gino's the same way. So we have very similar work ethic, and our goals were aligned. I think the times when partnerships fail is when they don't vet each other on the front end and they don't understand each other's true goals and exactly the person that they're dealing with. I'm fortunate to have, I think, the best partner in America. Guy is a hard worker, extremely ethical. We're fortunate to find each other.
And there's a couple of other things that I like to add to that. The first thing is you want to write everything down with a partner. You want to have operating agreements. I mean, Jake manages the properties. He manages them. He does a great job. He gets paid to manage them. So you have to have an operating agreement. You have to be on the same page. We don't nitpick. We do as we say and say as we do. Jake has to do something, he'll do it. It's not even an issue with me, which is awesome. If he has a problem down at the property, he'll give me a call. Partnerships are great because you can bounce off your problems. If he's having a problem with an employee, for instance, he's so emotionally involved, I'm detached. So he can call me up and say, what do you think? And I can give him an honest assessment of what I think. And I think for the most part, that really works well because I'm level-headed. I'm cool. I'm not dealing with the employee or the tenant one-on-one. It gives him just another fresh option to do that. Partnerships also help in real estate because we have balance sheets. So when you go to the bank, there's two guys bidding on a property. We have a stronger balance sheet because we have two guys on this property. We have guarantees. We both guaranteeing the property. That's a tremendous help right there. And my whole mantra is 50% of $10 is better than 100% of zero.
Yep.
That's just the way life is. You want to create a win-win with a partnership and with just in life in general. So it's not a zero-sum game. I mean, you start buying with these partners and your network starts growing and you have that ability to grow and to take on more because you have more guys being able to do stuff. Ideas are what generate wealth. So the more guys in a partnership, the more positive ideas, I think the more money you can make.
Keith, I don't know that I would have ever bought a multifamily unit if it wasn't for Gino. And so to his point, 50% at $10 is a lot better than 0% of zero.
And Keith, I did buy multifamilies and I was struggling really, really hard. So, I mean, would I have gone to Tennessee? Probably not. I might have stayed in Rochester and fumbled around a little bit. So, it does work both ways. I mean, partners, they rely on each other and it's just a great balancing act between the two.
Well, it sounds like you guys approached the partnership in a way that it actually is going to be successful because you started with the people first and you had an ironclad operating agreement. A lot of people start with a deal. Oh, I found a great deal. I got to have this deal. Now let me just go find a partner real quick. So they started with the deal and the numbers rather than the person first. And that's where a partnership goes bad.
That's great. That's a great point. And it's not a handshake. I've done the handshake thing in my life. I've been in business with my brother for 20 years and I had a handshake with him, but it's my brother. It's a different thing. I've been in real estate deals where the handshake thing there was no partnership agreements, no PPMs, and all of a sudden, what happens to that thing? That blows up. So, the moral of that story is just because partnerships don't work in the very beginning, don't have that limiting belief that they're not going to work in the future. You just have to know how to approach a partnership and really have to work with somebody, like Jake said, who's really ethical and who's really has your same moral compass and who has the same goals as you do. And I think you guys can all make it work out.
Okay, so you guys have been so empowered by the success of your partnership and the power of real estate investing that you published a popular, well-received book, Wheelbarrow Profits. I've got it right here. Discuss the wheelbarrow analogy. A wheelbarrow has two legs and one wheel. What's the symbolism behind that?
Yes, the symbolism behind that is something that came about throughout our investing and something we just stumbled upon. What we realized is that multifamily investing is a three-legged stool, and it comes down to buying right, managing right, and financing right. If you get those three pieces right, you're going to have a successful investment. So we looked at it as the wheelbarrow because it has three legs. And we look at the back leg of the wheelbarrow as buy right. It's fixed. Once it happens, there's no going back. It's fixed, just like the leg of the wheelbarrow. Then we look at the next as manage right as the wheel. Managing is always, it's ongoing, it's constant, the wheel's spinning, it doesn't stop. And we look at the second back leg of the wheelbarrow as finance right. You got to get your financing right. You want it long-term and fixed. And in the book, we talk about specific actions and frameworks within each framework as to how we do it, how we buy right in terms of we look for 10% cash on cash returns. We look for 8 caps. We have a managed right system. We look at finance and we want long-term fixed rate loans. We're looking for non-recourse, low interest rates, 30-year amortizations. And we lay that all out in the book. This is not just a book that talks about philosophy. This is an actionable, what are the numbers that you need book. And I think that's why it's been so well received.
And Keith, what's funny is when I heard Jake bring up this analogy of a wheelbarrow, I said, "What are you doing? You cutting the grass?" I said, "Where did you get an analogy of a wheelbarrow?" And then he's like, "I got to put these apartments." I said, "You know what? That makes such total sense because if one of those three is not right, your wheelbarrow is going to tip over and you're going to make a big mess and you're going to lose everything." So when you have all three functioning is when you're really going to optimize your asset there. You want to buy right. And I always tell people this, and I think this is really important. It's not what you buy, it's what you pay. So you can buy anything in the world as long as you're paying right and you're buying it right up front. You're going to make money on the deal. And, how do I know that? Because I have not bought right in a lot of instances, and I'm still carrying assets that I wish I had bought right. And they're learning lessons, and you take them on to the future, and you don't want to make that mistake. And I've made that mistake, and I just swore to Jake, we're not buying anything unless we're buying on actual numbers. I don't care how hot the market is or how we think we're going to be able to improve this property in the future. We buy on cash flow. If the property's not cash flowing, it's called an alligator. That's what I call it because it's going to eat you alive. People are always thinking about, well, 2 years from now, it's going to be worth X. I don't care what it's worth 2 years from now. We're buying it on actuals now, and we're going to force that appreciation because we're going to increase that income because we're buying properties that have, landlords that have been around for a while. Their rents are low, so we're going to increase that income, bring in laundry revenue, bring in fees such as pet fees and storage fees, and we're going to drop those expenses because Jake runs a tight ship there. We have everything systematized. We have those economies of scale now. When you have that many units, you can save a lot of money. So that's what our goal is. And that manage right is really the crucial part because it's a wheel. It's always turning. It's in constant motion. You have your team members working. You have your leasing agents. That is the part that you really want to nail because if you're not managing the asset, you're not really getting the ultimate value from the property. So you really want a great team of managers around you.
And the beautiful thing about the wheelbarrow is that not only is it that three-legged stool, but we're filling it up. We're filling the wheelbarrow up with cash, with assets, and it's ongoing. And we're buying, hold, and we're keeping it. So we like that.
I like that. So just to review the analogy for the listeners of the wheelbarrow, the one leg is the buy leg. The other leg is the finance leg because once those are in place, they're pretty well fixed. And then the wheel is the management portion, which makes a lot of sense because it's dynamic and it can be a pretty wild ride on that wheel if you're not careful throughout the ownership of the property.
I think it was you that said the tenants can force you to lose faith in humanity, but yes.
That is the way I put it, yes. Yeah, that wheel could go flat and that wheel could go a lot of places. You're listening to Get Rich Education. Our guests are Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro, the authors of Wheelbarrow Profits. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about why they target mom and pop multifamily property, how you increase cash flow by adding value and reducing expenses. We're also going to get some great tips on negotiating from them. This is Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold.
Garrett Sutton here, Robert Kiyosaki's asset protection attorney and the author of Loopholes of Real Estate. As an American or foreign-based investor in U.S. real estate, you know we are a litigious society. You know that you need to protect your real estate and paper asset holdings with the right mix of LLCs and corporations. My firm, Corporate Direct, not only forms these entities, but importantly, we properly maintain them too. If you fail to follow the corporate formalities, you can lose it all in an instant. Corporate Direct is your source for LLC protection and maintenance in all 50 states. Visit corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Get Rich Education for a free bonus. Switch your resident agent service to us and receive another bonus. It's all good. We look forward to assisting you at corporatedirect.com.
Are you looking for a roadmap to financial freedom? If so, we have a solution for you. Norada Real Estate is offering a limited number of free strategy sessions to help you get out of the rat race. Learn how you can create wealth and build monthly passive income. To set up a time with one of our knowledgeable investment counselors, simply go to noradarealestate.com. That's NORADA realestate.com.
This is Rich Dad Advisor Garrett Sutton. To grow your wealth, listen to the always valuable Get Rich Education.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're with the authors of Wheelbarrow Profits, Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro. Jake and Gino, I mean, everyone has their first deal and their first big deal and early trials, tribulations, problems, unforeseen circumstances, and all that. Why exactly do you guys target mom and pop multifamily? How have those deals gone? And what is mom and pop multifamily? What do you consider mom and pop?
Mom and pop, along with, we were just talking about our wheelbarrow framework, is something that evolved out of just what we started investing in, what was available, and it became our niche, and it actually created great opportunities for us to buy properties that were undervalued and had a very high ceiling to reposition and create wealth. A first apartment we got in was what we considered a classic mom and pop, and they come in all shapes and sizes. We look at a mom and pop as typically it could be a family-run business, it could be an out-of-town owner, but they're typically managing or they have a resident manager on staff. We've bought mom and pops from 25 units all the way up to 281 units. So don't kind of get this tunnel vision that this is a small little business. Doesn't have to be. One of the classic examples of a mom and pop that we purchased was this doctor owned a ton of real estate, but his wife was managing the properties, okay? And she didn't really like doing it, but he was kind of frugal, we'll use as a term, frugal. And the rents were way under market. There was no systems in place. The management was all over. There was no website. There was no marketing. And the whole mentality is what I call the death spiral. Basically, she thought if she kept rents low enough, she wouldn't have to fix anything and they could keep expenses down. But actually, their expenses were way out of whack. So if you looked, their garbage fees were extremely high. Their landscaping fees were extremely high. And every property we bought up to our first 4 or 5 were mom and pop apartments. And we were just fortunate to find folks that had large apartment communities that they owned with no systems in place. And it created a huge opportunity for us to go in, get the rents up to market, and do some exterior upgrades and interior upgrades and really add value to these properties.
Because you actually want to find a property oftentimes that has problems. If you can identify problems, you can see an opportunity and some meat on the bone in it for yourself, and that might be more attractive for you to go purchase.
100%.
Yep. Let me add a couple of the caveats for what a mom and pop is. I think the most important thing in real estate is you need to have a motivated seller. If you don't have a motivated seller, you're not going to get a deal. It's going to go retail. So what does motivated seller mean? It's somebody who is either retiring, has health issue, is out of state, just wants to get out of the deal, just sick of real estate, or somebody, you know what, who doesn't want a 25-unit mom and pop. They just found a 300-unit property that they want to get out of. So there's got to be motivation there. Maybe they're getting divorced. That's really important. The other thing is a lot of these mom and pops have deferred maintenance issues. Gutters are hanging down. And I'm not talking about like properties that have holes in roofs. I'm talking about like light maintenance. Most of our stuff is, paint the shutters, power wash, stuff that's really it's not really heavy lifting where you have to spend $5,000 a unit. That's really important. There's a little deferred maintenance, mailboxes, all that kind of stuff that you really can just clean up with minimal effort and, not a whole lot of money. Low rents is also really, really important. I want the listeners to go out there. There's a website that Jake and I use. It's called rentometer.com, rentometer.com. Gives you a basic idea of what rents should be in your market. If you don't have a broker, if you don't know who to call to see what rents should be, use the site. It's a great site for you to get an idea of what rents are. So if you find a property that has rents, this doctor that Jake was referring to, they had rents for $450 a month on a 2-bedroom unit. The market rate was $600 a month. So they were $150 a month below the market. So that, when we saw that, was a huge value add, on top of the fact that we bought it on actual numbers. So when you buy it on actual and then you can increase the revenue by $150 a month, that's a big, big win for you.
And of course, not only is that a cash flow win, but those larger properties are often based on what the cap rate is. So that increases the value of the building while it increases your cash flow at the same time. What about some tips for identifying a motivated seller, since that's often the key to finding a property you can add value to? How do you identify a motivated seller?
Well, a big part of it is going to be having those relationships with your brokers and asking the right questions, because you're going to want to find out the story when you're going into it. A lot of the properties that we bought, people say, well, you don't go on LoopNet. Well, if it's on LoopNet for a year or maybe 8 months, that might be an opportunity for you, because those people are starting to get sick of holding the property. They've been trying to sell it. Nobody's buying it. The property that Gino was just referencing was on LoopNet for, I think, $6.5 or $7 million, and we ended up closing on it for $4.075 million. So that's the power of these things when they sit around for a while. But then you got to get with your broker, and we like going directly to the listing agent. We don't bring a broker in on the deals. So we'll go directly to the listing agent. There's one broker involved. The message is not passing through 4 people. So the message that we're, either delivering or asking to be had with the owner is getting lost. So we're dealing directly with the listing broker, and we're asking him the questions. Why do they want to sell? What's the story?
Okay, so this apartment building that you just mentioned, the one that you got for $4 million plus, I just happen to know it's called Park Place Apartments because I have your book. Tell us a little bit about that, how after you closed on it, you went ahead and increased the cash flow by adding value and reducing expenses, what you call repositioning. Tell us about that.
Sure. We have a 3-step repositioning framework, and I'll go through each one with specific examples, but first I'll outline the framework. So the framework is fill the vacant units at market rate, implement RUBS, and then raise the remaining tenants to market rates. So with this property, in the beginning, there were expenses that we knew because we have other properties that were way too high. One being garbage, another being landscaping. And because we had properties and we know what we should be paying per unit, we were quickly able to address those. So there's no rocket science there. We just simply brought our team members on board and lowered those expenses. But to really not only lower the expenses, but raise the income, because when we took over, the property was doing $53,000 a month. This was a couple years ago. Now, last month, we did $93,000.
Wow.
So you can see the power of this repositioning framework. So step 1, we went in and we filled the vacant units at market rates. There were over 20 vacancies when we took over this property. But we didn't just go in and start leasing them out for $150 to $200 more per month. We went in and we have something that we call modern affordability. We went in and we put a vinyl wood look down in a lot of the floors. So we upgraded the floors when we were turning these units. We used a 2-tone paint scheme. We have a nice shaker beige color for the walls, and we had a nice semi-gloss white on the trim. From there, we may replace the plugs, the switches, and the outlets, nice bright white, and the light fixtures, which typically are $10 at Home Depot, but they look more modern. From that point, usually we're in a good position. We may paint the cabinets. But then the apartment looks fresh. It looks nice. We paint breezeways, upgrade the landscaping if we have to. These little fixes, this is not major construction. This is just updating. Makes all the difference in the world. And it gives us the ability to then go in and get these things rented out at market rates. Plus, we bought in an area where we knew there was a lot of blue-collar retail workers, which are our niche tenants. We're right next to Denso Manufacturing, which is one of the biggest manufacturers in East Tennessee. So we knew we were in a good market. And after we were able to do that, we filled all these vacant units up within 60 days. So we saw a huge surge in gross income. At the end of the 60 days, we start implementing RUBS, which is ratio utility billing systems. Essentially, what we're doing is we're billing the tenants back for their water usage, their water and sewer usage. And typically, it's about $35 per month. You can't do it if someone's still on a lease, so you have to wait until the lease expires. But we had a lot of leases expired at the time we took over, so we were able to do that over about a 12-month period. So with 136 units times $35 a month, you can see how much that will increase your gross income as well. At the end of the year, we go in and raise the remaining tenants to market rates. We start giving notices out a handful per month. And then typically by the end of 2 years, we'll have our property fully repositioned. And that's where you can see the huge surge from $53,000 a month to $93,000 per month in gross income.
Okay, so you've got all kinds of different fixes there. One from landscaping, which might not translate into directly you getting an extra $25 rent for a unit, but that gets more people looking. And when you have 20 vacancies on a 136 unit building, that gets more people inside the door to look at places and see for example, your two-tone paint scheme, which is something that you guys favor, not just using one color, but two.
A lot of folks just go in, these apartment owners, and just whitewash it all. From the ceilings down, it's just white. And that's not very attractive. And it doesn't cost much more to add a little color to the walls and trim it out.
Anything else for value add or repositioning to increase the cash flow on a property?
Well, yeah, we use these laundry services where they'll go in, and one of the great things about this deal that we were just talking about is they went in and replaced all the laundry machines. Then we sold the old laundry equipment, and there's a split on the income. And they actually prepay a certain amount of the laundry income. So that's a nice little chunker that you get at the beginning. We've also been able to negotiate some pretty favorable contracts with the cable company. I think the last one we got was close to $50,000. So there's these various things as well that some folks don't think about that you're able to do. This specific property, we actually had it reappraised, and it reappraised for $6.3 million, and we were able to pull out over $1.6 million on this deal. And as you know, that was tax-free refi money. So you can see the power of this repositioning framework.
Yeah, absolutely. That is cash in hand. Well, we have one listener. His name's Zach Ellard from Claremore, Oklahoma. He wrote on our Get Rich Education Facebook page that he'd like to hear more tips on negotiating. You mentioned a little bit about negotiating a cable contract, but I think in general, we're just looking for some good negotiating tips up on the purchase of the property, since buying right is one of the three stools of the wheelbarrow. So, whether you're using the inspection as leverage or using the appraisal as leverage or something else, what are some of the best negotiating tips where you found that you've gotten your better deals where that apartment building might make sense for you?
Let me give you a couple of principles on negotiation, then I'll go into some keys and also some techniques that are pretty much used in negotiation. First thing you want to do is you want to create a win-win when you negotiate. We were lucky to do this with one of our properties with the doctor. We go back and forth. We wanted to create a win-win. You create a win-lose. You win, they lose. You will never get another deal from that guy. He'll feel ripped off. We were fortunate that we did it with the doctor because a year and a half later, he came back and sold us another property at a substantial discount because we created that win-win. He got his price. We got the property. He felt comfortable dealing with us. So you always want to look for that win-win situation. It's really key in negotiation. The second one, which I think is vitally important, which most of us don't do, it takes a lot of skill. You have to listen. You have to shut your mouth and you have to listen to what the seller is saying to you. We're all so ready to jump in and talk, but if you just listen to what they're telling you, you'll hear their story and you'll know how to solve their problem or you'll know how to create value. That's really, really important. The third principle, I think, is you have to talk to the seller directly. It's hard to talk to a broker, to another broker, to the seller's family, to the seller. You really would try to get direct with the decision maker, with the person, so you get it right from his mouth. There's nothing lost in translation. It's the easiest way and the best way to negotiate. And number four, which Jake and I learned the painful way, everything is negotiable. You can negotiate on every single thing. I mean, the first thing that we learned when we were doing our loan with the bank, they wanted a 1% loan fee origination. So Jake said, can you take some off? He goes, yeah, sure. So he went down to 3/4. I mean, I was surprised. Jake said, if I had tried to get half a point, I probably could have gotten a half a point. So
well, yeah, because the last deal was a quarter, and we were thrilled with 0.75.
Remember that, Jake? I mean, you just got to ask. You never know. If you don't ask for something, you'll never know if you're going to get it. And Jake likes to say, be patient, be persistent, but be willing to walk away. If you have a strike price and you don't hit that strike price, you have to say to yourself, I have to move on to the next deal. You have to be really diligent about it.
That might sound confusing to people, though. I just want to elaborate on that a little, Gino, because you have to be patient in these negotiations, and you can't rush, but you have to stay with them, because the last deal we closed on, we just closed on 156 units, and we were negotiating on that from August of 2015, and we just closed last month, which was in March of 2016.
Wow.
Yeah, it took a very long time, and we lost the deal. We actually walked away, but what happened was the group that won out was actually a REIT, and they had one of the guys at the top of the REIT and the owners of this property knew each other from back in the day, and there was some bad blood supposedly. And the guy that worked within the REIT tried to retrade, and it got ugly. So eventually the deal blew up. So this one came back to us, but we walked away. We didn't overpay in the beginning, and then we were actually able to get our price. So we were patient. We were persistent. We stuck with the broker until the deal closed. We weren't walking away officially until the deal closed. It came back to us, and we were able to close on it. So we're patient, we're persistent, staying with the broker throughout the entire process until the deal closed, but we were willing to walk away. When we didn't get the price that we knew we could operate it at, we walked away from the deal. That's why I think that is really our mantra, and we stick to it when it comes to negotiating.
But to elaborate on that point, Keith, it was a roller coaster. You say it like, oh, August, March. I mean, it was during the holidays. So I remember the Friday before Thanksgiving, the broker calls me and said the due diligence period went over. So I was like, well, what does that mean? He's like, well, I think you guys might have a shot. And when you're basically mentally checking something out of something, you're like, I'm not going to get this deal. Then I'm back in it. The emotions were going all over the place.
Right.
Then middle of December, Thanksgiving is over. Christmas is here. All of a sudden, we get a contract New Year's Eve. I could not believe these guys were sending us a contract on New Year's Eve. It was just like a roller coaster of emotions. So it's easy to say be patient, be persistent, but willing to walk away. I mean, you just really have to stick in there and just say to yourself, if you really want something, you have to focus on it.
Easier said than done, but that's why we stick to it.
Totally.
Well, you guys probably are doing a good job at negotiating if you got the cheap doctor to deal with you, whom we're only calling frugal here.
That's your word.
That's right. So it's a lot about listening and finding out what the seller wants. I often say successful negotiating is definitively finding out what the other party wants and just not being afraid to ask.
Definitely. Let me give you 4 keys, real quick keys to negotiation. First key is just know their story. You want to create a rapport with the seller. I think it's vitally important. People do business with people that they like. I like you, Keith. Me and you have a great rapport. Me, you, and Jake. It's just so much fun to do this podcast because we like each other. A lot of content's coming out of it. You have to create that same likability with the seller. Get them to know you. Get them to like you. Create a rapport with them. That's really crucial. The second one is to have a plan B. If plan A doesn't work, have another option. Have a couple options laid out that if this doesn't work, you know what? I can't hit your $850,000 price. But what about if I give you $860, let's say, and you take some owner financing? That's a plan B. Think of something outside the box so you can go right back to him. The third one is have a way out. Have a contingency clause. If you get into a deal and you don't like it, make sure you have something written in that contract, whether it's a mortgage contingency or it's something to do with the inspection. It's important that you have that in there. And also the fourth one, we've been talking about it, know when to walk away. You do not exceed your strike price. And what Jake likes to do, he likes to have the seller name the price. We've done calls to action before, and they're very difficult because you have to name the price first. Sometimes it's always better to have the seller name his price first, and then you work from there because you can always go down. So if let's say the seller wants $1,000, but you already started at $1,200, it's not great. Let him start with the price first.
And that's with anything. Anything. It doesn't have to be a real estate deal.
That's right.
Well, that's some great actionable stuff, and that's appropriate because you guys, with your book, Wheelbarrow Profits, you've really written one of the more actionable real estate investing books. I've got it open right now. Maybe you can hear me turning the pages. I'm just looking near the back where you've got these takeover checklists, okay? You have a checklist of what to do prior to takeover 1 month out, and then just specifically what one needs to do on the day of an apartment building takeover. So, for example, 1 month out prior to takeover, and as I mentioned some of these things, just bring up if there's any particular mistakes to avoid. Prior to the takeover 1 month out, you review your current insurance, you get a quote from your insurance broker, you establish checking accounts at a bank, you contact a laundry company and negotiate a contract there. You review the garbage bill and get a new quote. You review the utility usage. And then on the day of takeover, you inspect all the units for carpeting, appliances, and smoke detectors. You deliver resident takeover letters. You to institute the ratio utility billing system, like you mentioned. You have a locksmith change the locks. You confirm the utility service is transferred into your name. A very specific, actionable checklist of things you need to remember to do. And also for people that may or may not want to get into this so that they're not overwhelmed, to look ahead and see just what it takes to buy an apartment building. Any particular challenges you had with those actionable items upon takeover?
Well, every deal is different, and not necessarily the ones that you just mentioned, but it's the things you don't know about. I'll give you a specific example. On the last deal that we just did, they used a different credit card processing service than we did. So what happened in the middle of the close, some of those payments got held up because they were still going to their previous company that did their credit card processing. And then so we had folks that looked like they were delinquent, but they weren't delinquent. They paid through the credit card, but it got held up in limbo. So there was a lot of things we had to do, working with the credit card company, working with the tenants, and not pointing the finger and saying, no, you haven't paid. We were patient with these people and said, let's get to the bottom of it. We're here for customer service, and we're going to figure this out. Because we could have said, no, you didn't pay. We're giving you an eviction. You're out. But we were patient with them. We got to the bottom of it. That's all cleared up now. And that's just something that we haven't experienced before, and that came up. We need to do an amendment, Gino, and put that in the book.
Yeah.
Second edition. All right, fellas. Well, this has really been some great actionable content. Why don't you go ahead and give out your website so our listeners know how to find out more about Jake and Gino?
It's a tough one because it's jakeandgino.com.
How are they ever going to remember?
And the email is really easy. It's jake@jakeandgino.com or gino@jakeandgino.com. And you guys can email us at any point.
Okay, fellas. Well, it's been great. Thanks for adding value to us today, Jake and Gino. Take care.
Keith, you're the
Thanks,
best.
Keith.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, some good actionable material there. I've got some other takeaways from Jake and Gino here. I mean, if you're looking for an apartment building, you're probably going to be spending some time on LoopNet.com. You might not find any deals on LoopNet, but at least you're going to find out who the brokers are. What you do is you contact those brokers. Like a lot of things, 80% of the brokers have 20% of the listings, and you want to identify and contact the 20% of the brokers whom have 80% of the listings and get a relationship with those brokers, okay? They actually found some of their best opportunities on apartment buildings that have hung around on LoopNet for a year or even 2 years. Those are the properties that most lookers have given up on, and some of those sellers come around to thinking that they've been unrealistic with their earlier asking price. In fact, they've had that type of seller that has come down $2 million on a property. Now, when Jake and Gino own a property, they have renovated it, and then they're trying to fill that vacant unit quickly. They often associate a website with their ad, and they have videos of the vacant unit on that website. Video makes the owner look professional, and the tenant can kind of pre-qualify themselves without having to actually visit the unit. Now, I just want to tell you something here. I want to let you know that if you're intimidated about buying a $4 million or a $5 million property or whatever, and you just think, I would just never have the money for that. Well, yeah, you actually can have the money for that. That's the good news. It just doesn't have to be your money, okay? You can aggregate other investors' money for the property that you identify, and then you can profit yourself. But you are going to need to learn some new skills to do that. I actually did an entire show on just how to do that when I hosted the Real Estate Guys Russell Gray here with me on episode 41. It's kind of like the old don't say I can't. Instead, ask yourself, how can I? All right, so this book, Wheelbarrow Profits, is about getting up your property's NOI, net operating income, in order to increase your cash flow. You know, this book might even help you decide. It might even tell you, you know what? I don't want to do all that stuff. I favor turnkey real estate investing instead, where this work is largely done for me. Check out your new recommended reading list at GetRichEducation.com. Thanks to our affable guests today, Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro. Check out JakeandGino.com. And boy, thanks to these four guys for sticking with me for so long. For GRE's business developers, John Collins and Marcus Whelan, sound engineer Vidran Champo, web designer Nikon Roy, I'm your host Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to Get Rich Education, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.